The morning had started like any other in the small town where the Thompson family lived. Emily Thompson was playing in the backyard, laughing and running around with her favorite doll, while her parents, Laura and Michael, enjoyed their coffee on the porch. It was a peaceful Saturday morning, one of those days that felt ordinary but would soon change their lives forever. Emily was only 6 years old, full of energy and joy, always singing little songs and making up stories. Her mom, Laura, loved watching her play. Her dad, Michael, seemed happy too, though he had always been a bit distant. Around noon, Laura went inside to make lunch, calling out to Emily to stay close. Just a few minutes later, when she returned to call Emily inside, the little girl was gone. The doll lay abandoned on the grass, but there was no sign of Emily anywhere. Laura screamed her name over and over, running through the yard, checking the neighbors' houses, calling friends. But Emily was nowhere to be found. Michael joined the search too, but his face looked strange, not full of panic like Laura's. The police were called, and soon the whole town came together to search for the missing girl. Days turned into weeks, and still there was no sign of her. Laura felt like she was living in a nightmare. She barely slept, barely ate. Michael, on the other hand, seemed cold and distant, going back to work as if life was continuing. Something about his calmness haunted Laura, but she pushed the thought away, telling herself she was just paranoid, too deep in grief to think straight. Years passed, and life slowly moved on, but Laura never stopped searching. She kept Emily's room just as it was, never changing a thing. Every year on Emily's birthday, Laura lit a candle and whispered happy birthday, tears running down her face. Michael seemed to have let go. He stopped talking about Emily after the first year, and even when Laura brought her up, he would change the subject or walk away. Their marriage became cold and distant. They barely spoke, living like strangers under the same roof. Laura felt alone in her grief, but she still clung to hope. One day, 12 years after Emily vanished, Laura was cleaning the bathroom when she found Michael's old shaving kit pushed far back under the sink. She opened it without thinking, just expecting to toss out old razors and shaving cream. But what she found inside made her heart stop. There, hidden among the razors and toothpaste, was a box of Plan B emergency contraception pills and a few white tablets she didn't recognize. Laura's hands trembled as she pulled everything out. Why would Michael have something like this? She sat on the bathroom floor, her heart racing, her mind spinning. Memories of that awful day when Emily disappeared came flooding back. Her husband had never seemed right after that day. He had always been distant, but now Laura's mind started to piece together things she had ignored. The way he never cried, the way he barely searched, the way he acted like Emily never existed. The pills didn't make sense, not unless something darker had been going on. Laura's mind refused to believe the horrible thoughts racing through her head, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She took the pills to her computer and began to search online. The pills were used in cases of sexual assault or to prevent pregnancy after unwanted situations. Her hands shook as she read more and more. She thought back to how Michael had always been protective of Emily, but not in the normal way. He was possessive, sometimes odd, and sometimes she had brushed off strange moments because she trusted him. He was her husband, after all. Laura felt like she couldn't breathe. A deep sickness twisted in her stomach as she wondered, had Michael done something to their own daughter? She tried to tell herself it was impossible, that she was imagining things because of grief, but deep down a cold fear had planted itself. She couldn't confront him yet, not without knowing more. So she quietly put everything back in the bag, careful to leave it as she found it, and began to dig deeper into the past. She searched through old photos, old emails, old memories, looking for anything that could explain the truth. The more she searched, the more little details stood out. Michael's late nights, the lies he told about where he was, the sudden change in his behavior after Emily vanished. It felt like her whole life had been a lie. Days turned into sleepless nights as Laura kept investigating, terrified of what she might find but too determined to stop. One night, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. She found an old locked box in the garage, one Michael had always told her not to touch. With shaking hands, she forced it open, and inside were old photographs, pictures of Emily, some of which Laura had never seen before. Some of the photos were innocent, but others made her stomach turn. There were letters too, written in a child's handwriting. Letters that made no sense until she read them carefully. In one letter, Emily had written, "Daddy says I have to keep our special secret. He says I'm his favorite girl and not to tell Mommy." Laura dropped the letter as if it burned her hands. She sobbed uncontrollably, the horror of the truth crashing down on her. It was worse than she ever imagined. Michael hadn't just failed to protect Emily. He was the monster she had been living with all along. But where was Emily now? Was she still alive? Had he done something to her, after all? The questions haunted her endlessly. She knew she had to go to the police, but she also feared what Michael might do if he found out she knew. For the first time in her life, Laura felt true terror, not just for herself, but for the child she had lost. Finally, with her heart pounding, Laura gathered all the evidence she had found, the pills, the photographs, the letters, and went straight to the police. The investigation that followed shook the small town to its core. Police reopened the case with fresh eyes, this time focusing on Michael as the prime suspect. He was arrested at work, completely caught off guard. And as the truth unfolded, it became clear that Emily had never been taken by a stranger. She had been hurt by the one person she should have been safest with. Further investigation led to a shocking discovery. Emily was alive. She had been hidden away, moved from place to place, and eventually abandoned under a different name by Michael after she grew older and began to speak out. Authorities found her living in a foster care system in a nearby state. She had no memory of her real identity, but DNA tests confirmed it was her. The reunion between mother and daughter was emotional and painful. Emily, now 18, had suffered deeply but was alive, and Laura promised she would never be alone again. Michael faced the justice he had long escaped, and the town that once grieved with Laura now stood by her side as she tried to rebuild a life with her long-lost daughter. The old shaving kit, the hidden pills, the dark secrets, everything had finally come to light. And though nothing could erase the pain of the past, Laura held her daughter's hand and knew they still had a future.